A man is now behind bars after a triple shooting that killed two people in Tuscaloosa. The sheriff's office says police responded late last night at Woodlawn Manor along First Avenue. Investigators say Kalia Houston and her 16-year-old sister were killed. A 17-year-old boy was also shot but is expected to survive.
November 10th, 2025, 11:30 p.m., Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Inside a cramped apartment at Woodlawn Manor, 3 babies are asleep in the next room. A 16-year-old girl is scrolling through TikTok, probably laughing at some dance trend she's going to try tomorrow. Her older sister, 20 years old, is in the kitchen, exhausted, overwhelmed, but still standing because that's what mothers do. And then there's him, the boy they let stay, the boy who had nowhere else to go, the boy who's been sleeping on their couch for months, eating their food, breathing their air, contributing absolutely nothing. Tonight, she's had enough. You need to leave. 4 words. That's all it took. Not a scream, not a threat, just a boundary, a line drawn in the sand by a woman who had every right to draw it. But when you're dealing with a man whose ego is bigger than his bank account, whose pride is all he's got left, those 4 words might as well be a declaration of war. What happened next didn't take long. No dramatic buildup, no final warning, just the cold, brutal sound of gunfire ripping through a home that was supposed to be safe. 2 sisters, gone. A teenage boy, shot. 3 babies and an infant, witnesses to a nightmare they'll never be able to unsee. And the man who pulled the trigger? He ran, because that's what cowards do. This is the story of Kalia Houston, a 20-year-old mother of 3 who opened her door to someone everyone else had turned away from. A young woman who believed in second chances, who thought compassion could fix broken people, who gave shelter to a boy who repaid her kindness with violence. This is about what happens when your good heart becomes your worst enemy. When helping the wrong person costs you everything, when saying no gets you killed. Welcome to Shadows of Crime. I'm your host, and today we're diving into a case that'll make you rethink every act of kindness you've ever considered. Before we go any further, hit that subscribe button right now. Smash the like, share this video because Kalia's story needs to be heard, and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from today. Let's build this community together. Now let's talk about the girl who didn't deserve to die. Kalia Houston wasn't just another name in a police report. She wasn't just a victim. She was a force. A 20-year-old woman carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders and somehow still managing to smile through it. Born in 2005, Kalia grew up in Tuscaloosa knowing what struggle looked like. She knew what it meant to go without. She knew what it felt like when nobody showed up for you. And maybe that's why, when she became a mother herself, she swore her kids would never feel that emptiness. By the time she turned 20, Kalia had 3 children. 3. One was 8 months old when he lost his mother, and another just 3 months old. Back-to-back pregnancies that would have broken most grown adults, let alone someone who should have still been figuring out her own life. Her oldest was barely out of diapers, still a toddler learning to talk and walk, while Kalia was already pregnant again, then again. But Kalia didn't break. She adapted. She hustled. She showed up every single day, even on the days when her body was screaming for rest and her mind was begging for a break. And if raising 3 babies under 3 wasn't enough, she was also raising her 16-year-old sister, Christasia Pruitt. Christasia, or Stasia as her friends called her, was everything a teenage girl should be. Loud, goofy, obsessed with TikTok, always filming videos, always dancing, always laughing like the world was hers for the taking. She wanted prom, she wanted graduation, she wanted to grow up, but not too fast. She had dreams she hadn't even finished dreaming yet. The 2 sisters were only 4 years apart, but they moved like twins, inseparable. You saw one, you saw the other. They weren't just siblings, they were best friends, partners in survival, each other's biggest supporters. Kalia wasn't perfect. She'd tell you that herself. She was sweet, but cross her, and she'd check you so fast your head would spin. She had the kind of loyalty people write songs about but rarely live up to. She loved hard, protected harder, and didn't tolerate disrespect. Not toward herself, and definitely not toward her family. Her friends described her as someone who would give you the shirt off her back, even if it was the only one she had. Neighbors remember her babysitting their kids for free, helping out at community events, always showing up when someone needed her. She loved music, she loved cooking, she loved organizing little get-togethers for her siblings and their friends, turning their tiny living room into a space full of laughter and life. She was active on social media, posting moments from her day-to-day grind, sharing her hopes for the future, documenting her journey as a young mother trying to build something better. And in September 2025, she finally got her shot. Kalia moved into her own apartment at Woodlawn Manor. It wasn't big, it wasn't fancy. It was small, crowded, barely enough space for her 3 kids, her sister, and herself. But it was hers. Her name on the lease, her fresh start, her chance to prove she could do this. She'd posted about it on social media, pride radiating through every word, new address, new number, no friends, no men problems, loving self, back making my money now. She was done with the drama, done with the chaos, done with people who didn't deserve access to her peace. This was supposed to be her new beginning, the chapter where everything finally clicked into place. But then she made one decision, one act of kindness, that would destroy everything she'd worked so hard to build. She opened her door to a boy nobody else wanted. Kishan Jamichael Woods was 19 years old and already a walking red flag factory. His own mother didn't want him around. His family had washed their hands of him. Friends who once claimed to have his back, they'd all tapped out. When literally everyone who knows you personally decides you're too much trouble to deal with, that's not the universe being unfair. That's you being the problem. But Woods had perfected the art of playing victim. He had the sob story down to a science. Polished, rehearsed, ready to deploy whenever he needed a new couch to crash on. He was broke, so he claimed, misunderstood, so he swore. Just a good guy who'd been dealt a bad hand by life, by his family, by everyone who should have supported him. The truth? He was lazy but blamed bad luck, disrespectful but called it being real, entitled but dressed it up as confidence. He had no job, no ambition, no accountability, but endless energy for destruction and an ego that could fill a stadium. By the time he crossed paths with Kalia, he'd burned every bridge he had. He was homeless, drifting from place to place, wearing out his welcome faster than cheap shoes. And that's when he found her, a young woman with a good heart and a fatal flaw. She remembered what it felt like to have nothing. Kalia saw someone struggling. She saw someone who claimed nobody cared. She saw what she thought was a person down on their luck, not realizing he was the bad luck. So in September 2025, she did what women like her always do. She helped. She told him he could stay at her apartment, just temporarily, just until he got back on his feet. The apartment was already bursting at the seams. 3 babies, a teenage sister, barely enough room to breathe. Privacy was a luxury they couldn't afford, but Kalia still made space, because that's who she was. She'd rather squeeze tighter than watch someone sleep on the street. Any normal person with even a shred of decency would have treated that opportunity like gold. They would have cleaned up after themselves, followed house rules, helped with the kids, looked for work every single day, and thank God someone cared enough to give them a chance. Even stray dogs understand gratitude, but not Woods. He moved in and immediately started acting like he owned the place. Didn't contribute a single dollar to rent, groceries, or utilities. Didn't help around the house, didn't watch the kids, didn't even pretend to look for a job. He just existed, taking up space, eating their food, using their electricity, treating Kalia's couch like a throne he was doing her a favor by sitting on. And then it got worse. He brought a gun into an apartment full of toddlers. A loaded weapon in a home where babies were crawling around, where a 16-year-old girl was trying to live her life, where a young mother was already stretched to her absolute limit. Kalia's fresh start, the one she'd posted about with so much hope and pride, was turning into a nightmare. The peace she'd fought for was being poisoned by someone who didn't respect her, didn't respect her space, and sure as hell didn't respect the fact that she'd saved him from sleeping outside. His entitlement grew like mold. He acted offended when asked to do basic things. He got defensive when questioned. He moved through that apartment like he had rights he'd never earned. By November, Kalia had reached her breaking point. 2 months of watching this boy disrespect everything she'd built. 2 months of biting her tongue while he contributed nothing. 2 months of wondering why she'd ever let him through her door. She wanted him gone. She had every right to want him gone. But to a man with nothing but pride being told to leave by a woman he thought he was above, that was unforgivable. And fragile egos mixed with loaded guns? That's a recipe for murder. November 10th, 2025. The day started like any other exhausting Monday in Kalia's world. Babies crying, diapers needing changed, Christasia getting ready for school. The usual chaos of a household held together by one woman's sheer determination. But by nightfall, Kalia had made her decision. Woods had to go. Tonight. She'd given him months of free rent, free food, free everything, while he contributed absolutely nothing. She'd been patient, she'd been kind, she'd given him every opportunity to get his life together, find work, save money, and move out with dignity. Instead, he'd gotten comfortable, too comfortable. So that night, with her family around her, Kalia told him what should have been said weeks ago. You need to leave. According to Captain Jack Kennedy of the Tuscaloosa Violent Crimes Unit, what happened next started with maybe a minor argument, absolutely nothing that would predicate something like this. It wasn't a screaming match, it wasn't physical, it was just a conversation that Woods didn't want to have, a boundary he refused to accept. Because here's the thing about men like Keyshawn Woods. They don't see kindness as kindness. They see it as weakness. They don't appreciate the women who saved them. They resent them. Every meal Kalia provided reminded him he couldn't provide for himself. Every night he slept on her couch reminded him he had nowhere else to go. Every day she woke up and handled her responsibilities reminded him of everything he wasn't. And when she finally told him to leave, that wasn't just rejection. That was humiliation. That was a 20-year-old mother, a woman he probably thought he was better than, telling him he wasn't good enough to stay in her space. His ego couldn't take it. Just before 11:30 p.m., Woods made his choice. Not a snap decision, not a moment of lost control, a choice. He pulled out his gun. The apartment was full. Kalia was there, Christasia was there, probably still scrolling through TikTok, thinking about what videos she'd film tomorrow. A 17-year-old boy was there, and scattered throughout the tiny space were children, babies, toddlers, including Kalia's infant son. Woods didn't care. He opened fire. Bang, bang, bang. Kalia Houston, the woman who'd given him shelter when no one else would, dropped, gone. 20 years old with 3 babies who would never feel their mother's arms again. Christasia Pruitt, a 16-year-old girl who just wanted to make it to prom, dropped, gone. She'd never graduate, never grow up, never get the chance to become whoever she was supposed to be. The 17-year-old boy caught a bullet, but somehow, through adrenaline and pure survival instinct, managed to run. He burst out of that apartment, bleeding, terrified, and screaming for help. He would survive, but he'd carry that night with him forever. And the babies? Kalia's infant, her toddlers, the other young children in the apartment? They weren't hit. Not physically, but they were there. They saw everything. They heard everything. The gunfire, the screams, the moment their mother stopped moving. That kind of trauma doesn't just fade, it embeds itself in your bones. Woods didn't stick around to face what he'd done. The second the shots stopped echoing, he ran, out the door, into the night, like the coward he'd always been. Because men who shoot unarmed women don't have the spine to face consequences. Police arrived at Woodlawn Manor to find a scene straight out of hell. Blood, bodies, children crying. Two young women who'd been alive and laughing hours earlier now lying dead in an apartment that was supposed to be their safe space. The 17-year-old survivor and other witnesses immediately identified Woods. They told investigators everything. How Kalia had let him stay, how he'd refused to contribute, how she'd finally asked him to leave, how he'd responded with bullets instead of words. Within hours, the U.S. Marshals Gulf Coast Regional Fugitive Task Force tracked him down. They found him hiding, probably still convinced he was the victim in all this. He was arrested and charged with 2 counts of capital murder and 1 count of attempted murder. No bond, no sympathy, no more excuses. But the damage was already done. 2 sisters were dead, 3 babies were motherless, and a family was shattered. All because one boy couldn't handle being told no by a woman who'd already given him everything. The news hit Tuscaloosa like a bomb. By Tuesday morning, everyone knew. 2 young sisters, one barely out of her teens, the other still in her teens, gunned down in their own home. Social media exploded, not with the usual thoughts and prayers nonsense, but with raw, unfiltered rage. People weren't just sad. They were furious. One post that went viral cut straight to the bone. When did people think it was okay to kill a female? And why none of the old heads stepping in for them babies? Lord, my heart aches for them, genuinely. That question hung in the air like smoke. Where were the men who should have protected them? Where was the intervention before bullets started flying? Why were 2 women surrounded by children left to face an armed man alone? The Woodlawn Manor apartments became ground zero for grief and fear. Neighbors who'd seen Kalia and Kristavia around, always together, always laughing, couldn't process that they were gone. One resident, Richard Woods, stood outside staring at the crime scene tape and said what everyone was thinking. Well, they got cameras out here, so I don't know. It's the people. The people have to monitor themselves. Translation? Technology can't save you from human evil. Cameras recorded the aftermath, but they didn't stop the trigger from being pulled. Reporters tried reaching out to the apartment complex management for comment on security measures, on what they planned to do, on whether they even cared. Silence. No response. No statement. Nothing. Because when poor black women get killed in low-income housing, the people in charge rarely have anything to say. Meanwhile, Kalia's family was drowning, not just in grief, but in the cruel reality of American poverty. They couldn't afford to bury their girls. A grandmother who should have been planning birthday parties was instead begging strangers on Facebook for funeral money. Whitney Neal, a community activist in Tuscaloosa, posted a plea that got shared hundreds of times. Donations were desperately needed to lay Kalia Houston and Kristasia Pruitt to rest. Funds could be sent directly to Will's funeral home on Martin Luther King Boulevard in Northport. Think about that for a second. A family already destroyed by violence now had to crowdfund dignity for their dead. Kalia's aunt spoke to reporters, her voice cracking with pain.
Keep y'all prayers for the family, the Pruitt and the King family. They was great, and like I said, my oldest niece, she don't left behind 3 children that are young babies. One, 8 months and 3 months. So
3 babies, the oldest not even a year old. They'll grow up with pictures instead of memories, stories instead of hugs, questions nobody will ever be able to answer in a way that makes sense. Why did Mommy have to die? Because she was kind to the wrong person. Christasia's friends flooded her social media with tributes, videos of her dancing, laughing, being 16 and carefree, comments like, "You were supposed to walk across that stage," and "Prom was gonna be our year," and "I can't believe you're really gone." She'd posted her last TikTok just days before she died, a silly dance trend. A smile that had no idea it was running out of time. The community held vigils, balloons were released, candles were lit, people who'd never met Kalia or Christasia showed up because the story was too heartbreaking to ignore. But beneath the grief was something sharper, anger at a system that fails to protect women, that allows dangerous men to slip through every crack, that forces families to choose between paying rent and burying their children. Keshawn Woods sat in a cell with no bond, but that didn't bring anyone back. Justice in a courtroom doesn't resurrect the dead. It doesn't untraumatize babies who watched their mother die. The damage was permanent, the loss was irreversible. And the question everyone kept asking was the same one nobody could answer. How do we stop this from happening again? Let's talk about the part nobody wants to hear but everybody needs to understand. Kalia Houston died because she had a good heart. Read that again. She died because she was kind. Because she saw someone struggling and thought, "I can help." Because she believed compassion could fix what that boy's own family couldn't stand. And that's the trap that gets black women killed over and over and over again. We're taught from birth to be nurturers, to be strong, to hold everything together even when we're falling apart, to save everyone, our kids, our siblings, our communities, and yes, even grown men who should be saving themselves. We're expected to be endlessly forgiving, endlessly patient, endlessly available. And when we finally say enough, when we finally draw a line and say, "You need to go," we get punished for it. Kalia's story isn't unique, it's a pattern. Women open their homes to men who've been rejected by everyone else, thinking they're being helpful, only to discover too late that there was a reason everyone else said no. Here's the first lesson, and write this down. When someone's own family won't help them, that's not bad luck, that's information. Woods's mother didn't want him, his relatives didn't want him, his friends didn't want him. That's not the world being cruel. That's multiple people who knew him intimately deciding he was too toxic, too dangerous, too much of a liability to keep around. But Kalia didn't have that context. She just saw someone who needed help, and her kindness became her death sentence. Lesson 2, boundaries aren't mean, they're survival. You don't owe anyone access to your peace. You don't owe anyone a place in your home just because they're struggling. Compassion is beautiful, but it can't come at the cost of your safety or your children's safety. If someone is disrespecting your space, not contributing, bringing weapons around your kids, making you uncomfortable in your own home, get them out immediately. Don't wait for it to get worse. Don't feel guilty. Don't let anyone guilt trip you into thinking you're being cold or heartless. Your safety matters more than their feelings, period. Lesson 3, recognize the resentment. Men like Woods don't appreciate the women who save them. They hate them. Every act of kindness reminds them of their own inadequacy. Every meal you cook, every bill you pay, every responsibility you handle while they do nothing, it's a mirror reflecting back everything they're not. And when that resentment builds up, when their ego can't take being dependent on a woman they think they're superior to, that's when things turn deadly. Lesson 4. Watch how people respond to no. The moment Kalia told Woods to leave should have been simple. Pack your stuff, say thank you, and go. That's how functional adults handle rejection. But Woods couldn't do that, because to him being told to leave wasn't just about losing a free place to stay. It was about being rejected by someone he thought was beneath him, and his response was violence. Pay attention to how people react when you set boundaries. If they get angry, defensive, or threatening when you say no, that's not someone you want in your life, let alone your home. Lesson 5. Stop expecting women to fix broken men. This isn't on Kalia. She didn't fail. She didn't make a mistake by being kind. The failure was Woods. The failure was a society that tells women they're responsible for managing male emotions, male violence, male dysfunction. We need to stop putting the burden of rehabilitation on women who are already carrying too much. Woods needed professional help, social services, intervention, not a couch in a crowded apartment with a young mother who had 3 babies to raise. Here's the bottom line, and I need you to hear this clearly. You are not required to set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. You are not responsible for saving people who won't save themselves. And if helping someone costs you your peace, your safety, or your life, it's not help, it's self-destruction. Kalia deserved better. Christasia deserved better. Those 3 babies deserved to grow up with their mother. And we owe it to them to learn from this tragedy before another woman pays the same price. Pause the video right now. Have you ever ignored red flags because you felt bad for someone? Have you ever let someone stay longer than you should have? Drop your story in the comments. Let's talk about it, because this conversation could save someone's life. Kalia Houston should be alive. She should be watching her babies grow, hearing their first words, celebrating their birthdays. Stacia Pruitt should be picking out her prom dress, stressing about finals, living the life every 16-year-old deserves. Instead, they're gone, murdered by a boy who couldn't handle being told to leave a home that was never his to begin with. 3 babies will grow up without their mother. They'll ask questions nobody wants to answer, and someone will have to explain that mommy died because she was too kind, too trusting, too willing to help someone everyone else had already given up on. This is Shadows of Crime. We don't just tell stories, we honor victims and expose the truth about violence against women who dared to be compassionate. Rest in peace, Kalia. Rest in peace, Christasia. Your lives mattered. Your story matters. If this hit you hard, subscribe right now. Share this video. Drop a comment with your thoughts. And here's your final question. How many more women have to die before we stop expecting them to save everyone but themselves? Think about that. This is Shadows of Crime. Stay safe out there.